The Lenovo Legion Go. What can I say about this device that hasn't already been covered by major handheld channels? Well, that's the aim of this video. What has been left out of the majority of these first impressions? What is the actual device experience instead of vague statements? What kind of issues are we encountering the first week in? Is the Legion Go the next handheld to dominate the market? Big maybe. I'm going to preface this review by saying, as a handheld owner at launch, you become an early adopter, and it's clear that this is Lenovo's first time around. I don't have a bias one way or the other, but rather I'll be relating my personal experience with it and my opinion on its current state. First, I'll just say that the hardware is just really well done. It feels like a solid, premium-made device, and it's clear a lot of care and consideration went into the design itself. The device is incredibly versatile as well, but it might fit into the motto of Jack of all trades, master of none. Let's start with talking about the controls. If you came from a Steam Deck and skipped the Ally, you'll be more at home with the controls in terms of ergonomics and shape, but they still have some comfort issues. The face buttons are great, very similar to Steam Deck and not as loud as the Ally. The back buttons feel a bit mushy, however, and are easily accidentally pressed due to their positioning, especially on the right controller. Getting the controllers off is odd, uncomfortable, and sometimes difficult. Press in, then pull straight down. Here's an example with the back-facing camera and the unit is upside down. Here I'm going to pull up. In this case, they also have a satisfying click once they're completely in place. If you don't hear that, then keep pushing. The annoying thing though is that it's very difficult to do this one-handed, and a warning to all the OCD people out there, you are likely going to get fingerprint smudges on the screen as you hold it to get the controller off. The kickstand is fantastic and makes this device a lot more versatile. You even have to press down a decent amount to move it. The hinge is just top-notch quality. Trying to take off the controllers while in kickstand mode doesn't really work without angling the device or lifting it up. Another issue is the right controller's M2 side button. It gets in the way a lot and is accidentally pressed when playing games. This depends on what position you're holding the Go, but I found that if you're laying down and holding it above you, you will press it constantly. The only way around this is to let the edge of the controller rest on your right palm, but then it's extremely uncomfortable to have all that weight rest on your palm for a long period of time. Additionally, the bumper buttons have a high amount of travel from the triggers to the bumper, which makes it difficult to alternate quickly between the two. Then there's FPS mode, which seems to work fine in testing, but I have to be honest that it is not something I ever cared about, and the reason why is that every time someone demoed it, they were at a desk or table, which seems pointless to me. I could just use a gaming mouse. Well, I have to say I was pleasantly surprised by FPS mode in bed. That's right. Bed FPS mode is the real reason to use this. You don't need to use a magnetic cover, and I find this an extremely exciting new way to use it. I can see myself playing strategy or point-and-click adventures on it, something I always found unenjoyable on the Steam Deck trackpads. That being said, I find the controllers to be decently comfortable. The weight doesn't bother me, but I have to be consciously reminded not to press any buttons, and the comfort level is somewhere in between the Steam Deck and the Ally for me. Now, we're going to move on to the display. I think anyone that had followed the previous AMAs with Lenovo felt lied to or cheated about the absolute truth that this is a portrait display. We were told it defaults to landscape when we specifically asked if the screen will be portrait or not. That being said, we have moved on and are dealing with the odds and ends that come with portrait displays. The screen itself is beautiful, although the whites can be harsh, but AMD color correction can fix this to a degree. Earlier this week, after waking my Go from sleep, it completely froze and the display driver decided to uninstall itself when I rebooted. I was presented with a sideways display due to the portrait nature. Once I logged in and Legion Space launched, it auto-flipped the screen for me. While auto-flipping is a nice little touch, I don't think that's what any of us expected when we were told it is default landscape. Now we're going to move on to performance. A lot of other channels have already covered benchmarks. I will just say my personal experience is that it works decently in games at the cost of a very loud fan. In the performance mode, the quiet and balanced modes, unfortunately, the Ally is beating it right now, so there's some work here for Lenovo to do. I overall had a good gaming experience when I am in games, but it is outside the games that I have found a litany of problems between Legion Space and Windows itself. If you want to see specific gameplay videos, be sure to check out Deck Wizard's channel, as he's been pushing out several videos each day showing what the Go is capable of. But I want to take some time to talk about the power profiles that the Legion Go currently has. The Fox has a detailed review of the Go's capabilities and power method testing. He ultimately recommends, if you want to play any modern games, to use the Performance Thermal Mode and Efficiency OS Power Mode, and I have to say that I agree 100%. I will link his video in the description if you're interested, but basically I will tell you in my testing, if you set the OS Power Mode to Performance, it will eat your battery for no reason whatsoever. The Performance Thermal Mode is 20 watt TDP. Also, setting the OS Power Mode to Performance will use 20 watts at any given time, even when idling. When set in Efficiency, you get nearly the same amount of performance, but it won't consume unnecessary power. I wish I could stop there and say that's all Lenovo needs to work on, but unfortunately we are just getting started. The custom TDP slider is completely broken. In my testing, when unplugged and set to 30 watts, it will actually run at 32 watts. Then it will throttle down to 30 watts. This is not such a bad thing. You might consider that this is an extra 2 watt boost. However, if you plug in power at the same 30 watt custom mode, you will get throttled to 25 watt, which is interesting. Why is plugged in supplying less power? Additionally, if you decided that you wanted to go to the other end of the spectrum and go to 5 watt in the custom mode, the lowest it will ever go is 20 watts. So as it stands in my testing, the custom mode is completely broken, and unplugged will actually give you more power at the 30 watt setting, but you also can't even go lower than the Performance Profile 20 watt setting. Another problem is that the Legion Go's behavior of TDP control seems to be very restrictive. I tried various third-party tools to override the TDP settings, but the Go appears to be repeatedly sending commands to override it. Even for tools I could override with, it would only last for a few minutes until the device was throttled back down. This rant is starting to bleed into the next section of the video. Many have already talked about the odd button placement for Legion buttons and how the Legion left side menu is kind of useless, but I want to talk about what Legion Space is still missing and what is present but not functioning. In all honesty, Legion Space seems exactly like it was during the demos at IFA, which really has me worried. One example is the custom slider for TDP we just discussed. The next is the overlay. For starters, there's no TDP or watts on this overlay. I have a feeling this was strictly for marketing purposes, so nobody could compare power consumption against its competitors. However, that ship has sailed, and we have the device in hand. We as a community need this functionality. Additionally, I can't even see a total package power sensor. The package power sensor is just handing me the TDP, which is an additional but minor concern. Next in the overlay, the FPS counter is broken. This was known when Ben Green, a community manager, was streaming a pre-production model over a month ago. He had explained that this was something their engineers were working on. So now, almost a month later, it's still broken. It works on some games, but not on others. It must be some kind of failure of the overlay detecting the correct renderer, as I was able to see the FPS in a DirectX 12 game, but not a DirectX 8 game. Then we have the ever-going confusion about the gyros, which is now clarified. There's an announcement that there is not just one gyro in the main unit, but there are 3 total, one on each controller as well as one in the main unit. Unfortunately though, in Legion Space you can't use gyro as a mouse, but only a joystick. It just basically defeats most use cases. And the same goes for the controllers. The functionality is half-baked. My suggestion to Lenovo here is that these features should be removed until they're ready. Providing a half-working solution that is misleading inside the application just hurts trust in what you are providing and makes it harder for the community to support your software. It was mentioned in other videos that you also cannot map any buttons other than X input when the controllers are in the controller mode or non-FPS. This seems to be extremely oversighted. What exactly are you going to use the 4 back buttons for? To have 5 A buttons? I'm really sorry that I just don't have anything good to say about Legion Space. Browsing the application is generally a horrible time. The right bar menu is the best part of the software, but it feels unfinished, and there are times when the overlay doesn't take over input completely. So my game character is moving in the background while I am also trying to browse the menu. Or there are other times where movement got stuck after I get out of an overlay and the analog stick is going in one direction on its own. There's also some kind of bug, please don't tell me it's a feature, where you can go up to 144 Hz from 60 Hz on the display, but you can't go back down unless you plug in a power cable. This is madness and makes zero sense, but some developer at Lenovo had to add this message in the application that warns you why you can't, which again is just complete madness. I can go into Windows display settings and change the display to 60 Hz with no issues. So why is Legion Space preventing me from doing this? I can't stand using this interface to browse my game library. I'm sorry. I find myself using desktop shortcuts to launch games instead. The overall feeling of it is sluggish and it feels extremely homebrew. None of the windows have any smooth animation. They just kind of pop in or out. This is not the kind of software I expected from a Fortune 500 company. Legion Space has a ton of work to be done. They recently published a Go update on November 2nd, highlighting that a new driver will be released along with some Legion Space updates. But the features they're talking about releasing, well, welcome, seem minor in comparison to the issues with their aggressive fan curve, their broken custom power mode, controller mapping functionality, and the overlay. These are all core features to me that should have been ready at launch, but instead seem like they were slept on for the last month and a half. Another thing I was really looking forward to on this device is how the experience would be as a tablet. I went ahead and turned off the controllers, which you have to hold the Legion buttons down on each one for about 5 seconds for it to shut off. I had a little trouble with the left controller at first, but it eventually responded. Once that was done, I wanted to get right into the side menu to change the performance to quiet mode, but there isn't a way to pull up this menu at all. So I opened Legion Space and found the menu item. I was trying to find a way to minimize it. Ultimately, I found on the left bar menu, I was able to get that up and then use the 4 square thing on the left. And then I needed to turn off rotation lock in Windows, and the whole time I'm moving around, the edges of my hands are touching the desktop and it's picking it up as input. Then I wanted to turn off the overlay because it was still there, but there isn't a way to turn this option off outside of the right-hand menu, which I can't access now. Then when I was looking for an option to do this in the menus, I tapped on customize and Legion Space just completely froze. This whole process just left me frustrated. It's neither simple nor intuitive. Let's talk about the feeling of holding it as a tablet. It is just really thick. It feels like you're holding an oversized tricorder from Star Trek. It feels very dense in my hands. I was having trouble finding how to hold it without it slipping. If you put your pinky finger at the bottom where the curve or groove is, then that feels okay, but the edges of the device being so flat just don't make it comfortable to really hold in the palm of your hands. Otherwise, typing and scrolling through web browsing, watching videos, all that seems fine. Obviously, you have to get used to the volume buttons and speakers being in a weird position for a tablet, but otherwise everything was functional. However, in quiet mode, it's set to 3500 RPM on the fan, and it's frankly just too loud in a quiet space. There's just no way around that right now until Lenovo does something about the fan curves. I was planning to use this device as a tablet for religious services, and I just can't see myself using it with this loud fan. Now that's pretty much it for Legion Space thus far. I've only really played with it for a couple of days, but there's also been some bugs and issues experienced in Windows itself. I'd already mentioned that the AMD drivers uninstalled themselves. Additionally, getting the driver back was not exactly as easy as launching Legion Space, which is what the previous AMAs alluded to. Instead, you need to go to Lenovo's website, find the device, download the drivers to reinstall. Not the hardest thing in the world, but Lenovo needs to remember their competition. This is not a laptop or a desktop computer. This should be easier. At the very least, there should have been a shortcut to this website right on the desktop, but preferably either Legion Space or another application should be handling this automatically. The next is that there have been 2 occasions where my wireless has just turned itself off in the middle of use, and then I just have to toggle it back on and it reconnects to my wireless network. Another issue I had was waking from sleep and the lock screen was just permanently locked. I just had to hard shut off. A couple more things to note in the image that it ships with itself is that for whatever reason it includes Microsoft Office pre-installed, but at the same time they ripped out Game Bar. Now you might be thinking, oh no, big deal, I don't use Game Bar, but every time you go to launch a game that has Xbox controls, it's going to prompt that it's looking for MS Game Bar. You can of course install this through the Microsoft App Store, but the issue is it shouldn't have been removed in the first place. You can just toggle it off if you don't want to use it normally in the Windows settings. I know that Lenovo is new to the handheld scene and we might just need to wait for the product to mature, but it's important for videos like this to be created that provide criticism of what is missing and what needs to be accomplished and where the community stands in all of this. Lenovo's community managers have been active in taking feedback and providing it to their product managers and other team members, which seems to have helped things speed along. But the reality is this is crunch time right now. Consumers need to see value in this product. The point of a handheld PC is primarily to play games. They need to make sure that the Legion Go is capable of having people experience a troubleshooting free system as much as possible if they want to be successful. There are several core missing features we talked about that need to be addressed as soon as possible. The longer they wait, the more returns are likely to happen. My personal opinion is that they were not ready for this release, and the software shows this. Obviously, with Microsoft controlling Windows, there's only so much they can do, but it appears that they really haven't done much but offer offer an auto flipper for the display at logon and a half-baked piece of software for the controller and thermal profile integration. They have a lot of work to do in the next couple of months. And I say next couple of months because Best Buy's return window is open until mid-January for the holidays. So I have a feeling that I'm not the only one that purchased from Best Buy that plans on returning this device if they can't turn it around by then. So Lenovo, my message to you, please prove yourselves in the coming weeks that you have a handle on this, you understand what items need to be addressed, and that you're going to deliver on these core features as soon as possible. If you like this video, please let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.